So for the purposes of the open meeting law, I am going to call this 3:00 p.m. Capital Outlay Committee meeting to order. It is now 3:05 on April 28th, 2021. And for the purposes of the open meeting law, if we could just actually go through and actually announce ourselves and actually convey that we are participating remotely, that would be great. So I will begin on Mike Mullen, the town administrator.
Chris Laviolette, town accountant.
Mary Hathaway, treasurer collector.
Robert Rendon, finance committee representative.
Ken Pacheco, the representative for the Board of Selectmen. And I'm
Tom O'Connor, a representative for the Dayton Rehoboth Regional School District School Committee.
So perfect. Thank you, everybody. So we are joined by John Guilfoyle or from a member of his team. This, and actually the outset of this and moving forward with this, we thought it could be really newsworthy to share with the town. So John Guilfoyle is on with us really to make sure that, in an announcement that they'll actually be working with us to get out, that they can convey really the context of what we're trying to do here as we kick off these efforts. So with that being said, we do, and it's actually the Board of Selectmen will be meeting this evening. On their agenda is a conversation about the Board of Selectmen appointment to the Capital Outlay Committee. So the Board of Selectmen can have a liaison, but according to the bylaw, the Board of Selectmen at-large appointee must actually not be an elected official or an employee of the town. So I believe there's a possibility that the board actually may be clarifying their vote to that end. Did you have anything to add on that, Mr. Pacheco? Or
no, I don't. I was appointed as a member at the last meeting, and apparently that can't happen. So I think I can be the liaison for the Board of Selectmen.
So are there any questions on the membership of the committee at this point? Basically, as the bylaw or as the article was written, the committee includes me as a town administrator, includes the town accountant, includes actually a named designee of the DI Regional School Committee. It includes a treasurer, a collector, and an appointee at large of the FinCom as well. Does anyone have any questions on the composition or have any issues at all?
No.
Okay. One, just in terms of the organization and how we go forward, this is a kickoff meeting of the Capital Outlay Committee. What I was thinking, and I just wanted to throw it out for ideas, is once we have the full, actually a full complement with a Board of Selectmen appointed member, like a second meeting in the next 2 weeks or so. At that point, the committee could perhaps organize and then elect a chairman, like in a clerk, so we have organization and going forward. Does anyone have any issues or questions about that idea? I will tell you that I kind of already have someone in mind for the chair. That is not me, but that can be a future discussion. And I'll share my screen just so the agenda actually comes up, because I want it actually this hopefully to be a participatory process. So where we are in this process is actually really exciting. We are in the beginning of a capital planning process through the Capital Outlay Committee. And as we know, the town has a number of current and future capital issues and priorities, that we need to address and should be addressing. And the fact that, the town, through actually Mr. Rendon, the Board of Selectmen, the FinCom, last year had the foresight really to pull these efforts and all the stakeholders together is really exciting based on the needs we have before us. And I do know that Mr. Rendon, from what I've understand, has really been the in-house expert in terms of, where we actually have been with capital priorities, how they've been funded, how they've been scheduled. And, I think a lot of the work ahead of us is really actually making sure we're continuing to plan them, that we come up with a funding methodology, that might be more sustainable to do so. And how we look at the bigger ticket items that we need to be looking at and considering as well. Mr. Rendon, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just add this. In the past, I was primarily looking at what are our upcoming expenditures. We weren't making any sort of recommendations to the town. And I really think with the formation of this committee, we're looking at two things distinctly. The first is not only coming up with that plan, but then being able to make recommendations on how we should spend our money. And then Mr. Mullen alluded to the other piece, which is coming up with that funding mechanism. If we're anticipating on spending, $300,000 to $400,000 a year on capital expenditures, how are we going to fund that? And not only fund that, but to actually increase that capital stabilization fund, so that in the event that something significant occurs within town to a particular building or piece of equipment, that we are able to address those needs as well. So not, funding it for more than what we're actually spending at a small growth rate, so that we can preserve our options for future expenditures.
Thank you, Mr. Rendon. Do any other members of the town accountant, the treasurer, Mr. O'Connell or Selectman Pacheco have any thoughts really that, what kind of you envision and how the committee should move forward, or kind of ideas as a framework, if you will?
Yeah, we need to prioritize the needs of the town. I'm not sure if Mr. Rendon already has a list of some of the things that we're going to have to spend on, but I'm also a big fan of increasing the capital stabilization fund. So I know we've given money in the past, maybe 200,000. I don't think we've given higher than that I can remember. But I would like to see out of free cash that fund to be increased, and so that we have that as almost as a backup. One of my top priorities, and it's not part of the immediate future, is the new library. Right now, they've been approved a grant for $4 million to repair and put a second floor, additional floor on the library, which I am not a fan of. I think we'd be better off and it'd be cheaper if we just build a new library. But that's what's pending. And I know we were number 17, but I think we've moved up because other towns have decided because of the pandemic that they can't afford a library. So I know we moved up, and I'm not sure what's going to happen once it's our turn, because I think a lot of people are not in favor of just adding on to the library. Some would prefer a new library. We have other issues, as you know, in town that we've talked about sewerage. We talked about, I'm not sure if that would be covered under this. We're talking about the work that needs to be done on Main Street. So there are a lot of items. I'd be interested in hearing from the members as to what how they're prioritizing the different things that we need to do in town. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mullen, if I could.
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Connor.
So just from the school committee aspect, really looking at taking a look at the Dayton campus there and the capacity issues that we're having, because as these new developments are going in, we're already, there are modulars there, and we're in year 3 of modulars that were supposed to be, about a 5-year plan for modulars, and those aren't going anywhere anytime soon. So I know there's the town's looking at fixing the traffic issue, which I was there today picking up my middle school son, and it was busy, busier than usual. So that work is that's gonna be good work there. But I think the capacity issues, and as new homes and these new developments go in, we're gonna be up against the wall with where we put kids in both of those buildings. That's certainly something that should be on the horizon, and really take a look at what we're gonna do, because if obviously if you kick the can too far down the road, it's way too late. So.
Yeah, Mr. O'Connor, if I can comment on that, one of the reasons why when the former town administrator and I drafted the revised bylaw and included the regional school district is not so much as to say that the regional school district is more important than any other department, but more so that there's transparency between what the school district is planning on, and not just within Dayton, the Dayton campus, but also at the high school as well, so that there are no unexpected capital outlay costs that we're not aware of years ahead of time. And that's kind of been the the tripping point for us has been some of these items are not making its way back to the town, whether it's to the Board of Selectmen or to the Finance Committee, that, hey, in 3 years from now, we have to look at potentially replacing, whatever the case may be, a boiler, or whether it's at the high school or at either of the schools on the Dayton campus. It's more about not knowing. It's more than knowing about what's coming up in the upcoming fiscal year. It's about that 3, 5, 7, even 10 years. Where do we stand? What kind of improvements do we need to make, so that we don't get blindsided? And I'm not saying that the school district has done that necessarily with any big ticket items, because they certainly haven't. We've been able to absorb most of those costs, but obviously there's been some contention with some of that, and the roofs, a couple of years back were a very good example of that. And the townspeople of Dayton have very much supported the school district, and has been obviously more than willing to approve the capital outlays needed for projects such as the roofs. But I think if the other participant in our agreement is as aware of these potential costs as far in advance, that planning just becomes that much better.
So I wholeheartedly agree with you. I've only been on the committee for 3 years, so I certainly, and obviously I live in Dayton, so I've supported everything at the school as well. Was involved with the modular vote and all that stuff, and we absolutely, before I was on the committee, when those opened, my youngest son was in that first class. He was in the library classroom there, jammed in that class. So the committee and the district certainly appreciates all of the support. It has been at least from my perspective, it has been a very good relationship, and usually things are very transparent, and Dayton's been very, very supportive. To that end, I'll tell you that I don't think, and I can go back and sit with Paul Kitchen and Dr. Azar, but thinking of just today, major things we're looking at for either the high school or the Dayton campus. The Dayton campus I don't think there's anything major we're looking at there. The Rehoboth campus are looking like, it's not going to affect us, but there's a rooftop unit they want to put into Beckwith, but that might be able to be covered by Tran. There's some things there that'll be covered. The big thing and you may have heard it if you listened to the meeting last night, is that we're looking to, there will be language coming to the town shortly like in the next couple of days, probably, to put in a warrant article or an article on the warrant to request. So the district can create a capital stabilization fund for ourselves. But in order to do that, we need a vote by both members of the district. So there's got to be an affirmative vote. Well, there's got to be a vote by both members, or if no vote is taken within 45 days, basically it's acquiescing and it's an automatic approval at that point to create the fund. Doesn't mean we put money into it, but we create the fund. So what we're looking to do is, over the past couple of years, obviously, the roofs, tran, boilers, all of the, the buildings are pretty well buttoned up. Heating systems, especially this past year, HVAC, everything's been upgraded, and it's in good working order. Most of the lights have been changed over to LED lights. The district electrician has been working. He's been working his butt off doing all those, and probably saved just about $30,000 in installation fees on lights, just doing those by himself instead of going out to a contractor. So he's been working his tail off, and those are getting upgraded in DES, TMS, and at the high school. The high school should be pretty much done by now or close to it. The next big thing is going to be, and you've probably heard all the talk about our football fields, baseball fields, softball fields. The pump died right about it. Sometime in 2019, the pump failed. The well pump failed for irrigation, not obviously for the school, but for irrigation. And then everything kind of cooked out there, and it wasn't maintained. So we are in the process. The parts have been bought. There's a company that's looking at the well. It's about $10,000. We're able to pay for that. It's not a big deal. Fix the well, get everything. We're going to top. If you had listened or heard last night, we're trying to create that capital stabilization fund so we can take some of our E&D money in order to pay for that out of the capitalization. In order to pay for the method of payment to go to the bidders, we have to put it into the capital stabilization fund and then take it back out. And I don't understand the nuances as I was reading it. We got the packet late yesterday, and I can get with Paul to get the finer details, but we have to create that fund in order to move the money, to transfer the money in, to then pay the money out to the companies. We've already got bids to fix the tennis courts because they're unusable. The track is condemned, as I'm sure most of you know. So those two things will get fixed. I think the tennis court's about 55,000, 65,000, somewhere in there, and the tennis courts are around 400,000. And the next thing is then to start building. We're also going to top dress the field. We're going to have a company come in, top dress the field, slice seed it, aerate it, fertilize it. So by the fall, the big concern is, football's not playing on it this spring, and they can't, but to have a field that's playable in the fall. Most of the grass fields in the South Coast Conference are unplayable right now because, football, April grass doesn't support football. It's not grown back in. But we're looking to try to get that field up and suitable for the fall. And then from there, we'll be able to pay for that. But from there, really looking at what's our, as you said, Mr. Arnon, 3 to 5, 10-year plan to put money away, because ultimately what we want to get to is a turf field. It's a turf field that's lined for everybody to play on: football, lacrosse, soccer, all of those things in one facility. Stoughton just did one, and I coach a youth lacrosse team, and I was at that facility. It just opened a couple of weeks ago in our first game. Beautiful. And they were, obviously I don't know how they funded it, but they're a bigger town than us. But if we can get to that point and slowly build some capital stabilization money, we'll be able to really fix that problem that we have with the outside. Now that the inside's buttoned up, we can fix the outside and get that suitable. So you'll see some warrant article information coming from the central office here in the next, I'm hoping the next couple of days, and I can reach out to Paul and Dr. Azar to see how quickly it's going to get there. So it's at the town meeting. The hope is to have it for the town meeting in June, so the town can see the article and vote on it then.
So not to get too far afield, Mr. O'Connor, but relevant to this conversation, so our town meeting warrant actually closed. It was open for a month and a half. It just closed last Thursday afternoon.
Okay.
So I'd be happy to follow up with you and Mr. Kitchen offline to see about how we can move forward to actually a fall town meeting discussion, but also I see where we have the opportunity to move the issues forward that do need to be moved forward. But the warrant is closed at the moment.
And I can get with Paul, and
Okay.
certainly we can meet offline, because there's some other ways to action that as well.
Okay.
But anyway, that was a long story to tell you what
Yep.
the next big thing coming is for capital wise for the either of the two campuses is the outside, and that's what we're working on. Sorry, that was a very long drawn out explanation.
So thank you, though. I think it really helped to set the context. So in terms of how we want DR and like in the school committee involved in this process as well. So thank you for that. Town accountant, do you have anything to add?
The only other thing, and what's going to be a drain on your capital plan is going to be deferred maintenance on infrastructure, i.e. roadways, water lines. If you're having to, well, I don't think you really have to worry about the water lines because of the water district sewer lines. Although I suppose that's really a sewer department issue. So just know that your deferred maintenance on infrastructure is also going to put an, be a big impact on your capital plan going forward.
So like into that note, so two things. So Mr. Aguilar, the building commissioner, he actually chairs the Municipal Building Needs Committee as well. And so in conversations with him over these last few weeks, one of the things we have actually discussed is both this effort and the efforts of his committee really working in tandem to come up, because basically the municipal building needs are going to really inform what our capital needs are as well. So whether they're deferred or whether they're current or future. So based on this, I'll actually kickoff meeting, and then what I was kind of envisioning later in the meeting is actually, based on where we are in the Warrington town meeting process, hoping about, based on the will of the committee, is in a week or 2 weeks time, we have a follow-up meeting. So once we're able to put, actually include things in spreadsheets about what is being proposed now, where we've been, and then a lot of the needs that are going to be charted and planned out forward are really kind of, in my initial view, is going to be determined in part by the needs that are going to be illustrated and outlined by the Municipal Building Need Committee as well. Does that make sense with everybody so far?
Yep.
And then based on that, the other actually very timely aspect of actually what we're setting out to do is the federal American Rescue Plan funding that is coming to Dayton. And that will probably, in the additional opportunities that Dayton will have from the state and federal government as well. Just on the town side alone, so we already know in the next few weeks, we can expect a deposit of about $785,000 in one-time federal money through the American Rescue Plan. And that can be used for infrastructure, to help us really get the local economy back up and running and improved. It could be, used for broadband, but in a number of other aspects. And maybe for the second meeting, we can actually dig more into what that funding can mean for Dayton, both the 785 and then the approximately $1.5 million that Dayton should be eligible for, that is going to come through, at least right now, through Bristol County. And that funding is one-time only money. So it's not like operational funding. It's really, it's for capital. It's for our infrastructure and other investment. So I think our committee should really, along with the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen, have a really key role in trying to chart out exactly how we move forward in that as well. Does that make sense with everybody?
Yep.
Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Because that is a big infusion of federal funding coming our way.
Well, Mike, one thing I want to suggest or recommend is that we get Mr. Ferry involved, make sure that he actually has a roads inventory and knows what the condition of the roadways are. Because that's your biggest capital cost right now by far.
Yes. Anyone? I mean, I think one thing that we actually could and would consider is how the school portion of the funding, which is coming separately, how that could intersect with our priorities as well. So that will be really important.
I think Paul has talked about that. So I know there's some discussions, and I don't know if it was with you, Mr. Mullen, or if it was with the Finance Committee, but I know he's been, or the Board of Selectmen, but I know he's been talking to some folks in both towns about that. So I'm not privy to all of that. I just have just enough of that to be dangerous. But I know that discussions happen. I know there's been a discussion. I just don't know who that discussion's been with.
So yeah, he has, I think at least to me, just briefly kind of gave an overview talking about HVAC, and other aspects. But at the same time, my conversation with him about these things was around 3 or 4 weeks ago now, Mr. O'Connor. So, and this whole process is evolving by the day as well. So, I mean, it's going to be, I would anticipate a more robust and future conversation as well. Mr. Rendon, do you have any thoughts on the federal funding aspect?
No, nothing in particular. It's nice to know that that's going to be coming, but like you said, it's one time only. Can't count on it, and this is where it's going to be. Every department head's going to be fighting for their own, pet project, if you will, and it's going to be up to this committee to come up with the recommendations on what's the best fit for the town to do with that money, and obviously then put it into the townspeople hands to decide, but our recommendation will go a long way towards influencing and determining where and how we spend that money.
So no, thank you. So again, this is just my thoughts, but again, if anyone, I mean, I'm not an expert here, but just in terms of an organization and a framework forward. So what I was actually thinking, because we're just over a month from town meeting, and with the warrants actually just having closed, so we have worked everything into a spreadsheet. With the so-called capital and/or money articles that are being requested for a town meeting. And what I was thinking of actually doing is going through that spreadsheet in a moment. And then as a follow-up to this meeting, and before our next meeting, actually going through what is being proposed now, and how that relates to what has been spent in prior years, and really creating the base of a spreadsheet that will then be used to actually help plan and forecast out. Does that type of framework make sense with everybody right now? Does anyone have any additional thoughts just before we start that framework conversation?
Mike, my only concern, looking back, is that, capital, as we all know, the capital items are typically one-time only expenditures.
Yes.
So unless the future plan includes things that we've spent funds on in the recent past, looking backwards, I don't think is going to do an awful lot for the capital plan, other than to make sure that we don't duplicate anything that we've done, say, in the last 5 years. But clearly, if something is being proposed, say for fiscal 22 and beyond, and it's not something the town has contemplated in more than 10 years, going back 10 years doesn't make any sense. Just laying that out there.
So no, that's a really good point. I mean, just for edification, my thought would be a 3 to 5 year look back, just to inform kind of equity and fairness across everywhere in terms of how we're envisioning going forward to really inform how we're going forward.
Sure.
Does that make sense with everybody?
Honestly, I don't think we've done, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think the community has done that many projects that looking back 3 to 5 years would be all that difficult anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is Robert, does that make sense with you?
In some sense it does, and but then, in another vein, it's like, maybe we want to just take a fresh approach,
Okay.
right? So, I've been involved in this process now for 6-7 years. So I'm pretty familiar with what's going on, but I don't want my experience to influence others in how we want to move forward with this new committee. I mean, we've pretty much been given license to execute here, in terms of how we want to plan, how we want to recommend, how we want to fund. So kind of a non-committal answer on my part. I'm sorry for that.
No, perfectly understood. But I mean, and maybe I'm thinking selfishly, just in terms of my, the fact that I'm trying to get up to speed as well. So I'm probably speaking from that perspective. I think just initially, kind of at least a 3-year look back, just to kind of set the table, if you will, could be helpful. At least, frankly, if I'm I'm happy to pull together a spreadsheet. And once I do that, I can even hide the columns, but at least it will give me a working kind of understanding of where we've been in terms of what we funded as capital. Thoughts?
I'll tell you what, Mike. How about I give you a 2 to 3 minute overview of how we've done things. And then if you still feel like we need to go into that 2 to 3 year look back, then we can.
I think that's a good compromise.
Okay. So, and I'm just going to tell you this, not from a capital outlay perspective, but more from a finance committee perspective, is that the special articles get submitted, and the FinCom, for the most part, makes their recommendation on how to fund it. So you will see capital expenditures that come out of free cash, capital expenditures that come out of the stabilization fund, and occasionally even under raise and appropriate. When it's typically, what we like to do though is for anything that is going to be an annual operating expense is going to go under raise and appropriate, because it's going to become part of the regular budget. Okay. And so we've either been funding for the most part out of capital stabilization or out of free cash. And in some sense, it's 6 of one, half and a dozen of the other, right? Because you can take free cash, move it to capital stabilization, and then pull it back out for those expenditures. But really, the bottom line is that the finance committee has tried to maintain a balance of roughly $1 million in that account, so that we don't shortchange ourselves on our annual operating expenses, our annual budget. So that we can minimize any tax impact if we were to overfund our capital stabilization account. When I say overfund, meaning put a significantly larger amount of money into there, as opposed to just maintaining our tax rate or possibly reducing it or having a nominal increase to it. So we're trying to balance everything between what we have available to us, what we've saved, and then what kind of an impact is this going to have on our townspeople. So for the most part, we haven't had any huge expenditures out of capital stabilization over the last few years.
Okay.
I mean, I think that the largest request, and Mr. Laviolette, correct me if I'm wrong, has been roughly $125,000, $150,000 for some highway equipment.
Yeah, actually, Robert, I believe the biggest transfer out of capital stabilization or stabilization, whichever one we're talking about right now, was actually for a down payment on the police station. I believe the townspeople committed about $400,000 a couple of years ago.
Did we take that out of capital stabilization, or did
I don't
we
know if
just
it could have come out of it could have come out of general stabilization or capital stabilization.
Yeah, I don't think it came out of capital.
All right.
Yeah, I don't think it did either.
Okay.
And then we've been using free cash as well, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we've, so for, to that end, Mr. Mullen, it's really just looking at the whole picture type of thing. And we're not, it's more about need than anything else, need and affordability for the townspeople.
That makes sense.
And so that's why I think looking back is, we may not necessarily have the history behind what the need is. And, it could be something quite as simple as, this is a replacement for something that's so old that it's end of useful life. So revisiting it may be a decent thing to go through, but I don't think it really would impact what we're going to be addressing in the future.
So yeah, like at that point, we just be examining history rather than charting forward, you're saying?
Right.
Okay.
The other thing I'd like to share with the committee, knowing that primarily capital items have been funded either with free cash and or transfers out of general stabilization or capital stabilization, you have some alternative funding mechanisms as well. As you're aware, you have your debt exclusions, which you can do if you choose to borrow money. You also have what they call a capital exclusion. Capital exclusion would be for effectively a one-time purchase. I'll give you, for example, the town of Franklin wanted to commit $1 million a year towards infrastructure repairs. And they were going to basically put a capital exclusion on the tax rate. It's a one-time only addition to the taxes. Just a single year, we raise $1 million through taxation above and beyond the levy limit, and it pays specifically for those repairs to the roadways and whatnot. Not saying it's necessarily a popular thing, but I think if the townspeople have that as a potential alternative, they know about it, that you're not necessarily looking to save money in stabilization in order to take it back out 2 years. You can kick the can down 2 or 3 years down the road by placing money in stabilization and then taking it back out when you're ready to spend. Or if there's a significant need, especially when public safety is at issue, you do have that alternative. And then you have your lease purchase type operation as well, option as well, which the town is considering right now for a new fire engine.
And we have utilized that mechanism in the past as well.
I mean, you're in a really good spot right now. I mean, within the economy, interest rates are very low, so it's a very good time to borrow. I'm not suggesting that the town should just go out and borrow $25 million just because, but economically, you're in a really good place. You don't have a lot of debt on the books right now, and the debt you do have is all excluded debt anyway. So you've got some potential room in the future.
Mary, that's why you're here, Miss Hathaway.
I'm listening, taking it all in.
Okay. So would it be helpful if I share with the committee the special capital related articles that I have been actually submitted for the June 7th town meeting we can discuss them and then discuss how we want, these requests and other requests really to kind of help shape how we go forward. Does that make sense?
Mike, my only suggestion on it is that unless the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee are asking for a recommendation from the Capital Committee,
Mhm.
I mean, other than just sharing it, it probably doesn't, it doesn't add much to the immediate, as far as what you're planning on for
Mhm.
spring town meeting. But
Yeah.
certainly going forward, if some of these things are not approved by the board in the warrant process tonight,
Mhm.
then yeah, you definitely want to, we're going to need to update the committee.
Yeah,
All right, I'm not suggesting you shouldn't share it all. I'm just,
Yeah.
Unless the committee is prepared to take a vote today,
Mhm.
it's really just for sharing purposes only.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, and I guess really that's the immediate question based on the timing of this committee actually coming together, based on the timing of the current process. How do the committee members feel based on where we are in the budget process with continuing the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen process to continue working forward as they have? And so in our, in our committee's recommendation process, really to start, either in the fall or in the FY23 process. I mean, that's kind of an open question I have for the committee, whether we think we're in a place really to make any recommendations for June 7th, or if our work going forward is more kind of future and forward thinking into the fall and next year.
I know I would weigh in that it's more future thinking, that these articles have already been submitted.
Mhm.
We've heard some of the budget discussions, and for those of you that haven't attended any of the Finance Committee's budget meetings, we've as we talk to some of these special articles, there have been pointed questions made to me specifically about has Capital Outlay been aware of these types of potential expenses? And the answer has been, for the most part, yes. Again, I don't have a list necessarily, and I'm not sure who would have the list of, and this is something that we would actually need, is a list of all the capital that we actually have as part of our inventory, so that we understand, even without talking to department heads, where some equipment may be approaching its end of useful life. And when we don't hear from a department head in particular, we can be a little bit more proactive and get in front of those and ask, where do we stand on this particular piece of equipment? Are we looking to replace it in the next 3 to 5 years? That kind of thing. So yeah, I think we're more forward looking. We need to help, start setting up a process. I think we want our department heads, at any time when they identify a need, have some form or some process to follow that they can, identify that need to us. And whether they say, we think we're going to need this in 2 years, we're going to need this in 7 years, whatever the case may be, we can start adding it to our backlog of items that we need to consider as possibility. And then we need to be able to have that kind of a process where we get together, probably like what I was thinking, and I'm just tossing it out there, is meeting like every other month, but from a timing cycle as well, knowing that budgeting occurs in April, that the warrant closes in April as well. Probably in that January through April timeframe, we're probably going to be needing to meet on a monthly basis, if not every 3 week, maybe 2 week basis. But then the rest of the year on an every other month kind of basis to evaluate these requests as they come in, kind of thing, and kind of slot them in to kind of just stay current on where things stand so that we don't get, you know, the hoodwinked, so to speak.
So that makes perfect sense with me. Does anyone else have any thoughts on the process, the timing, and what a regular meeting schedule could look like?
So Mike, if I may, so in other communities where I've either worked for or done, you know, worked on an audit, there is a standard document. In some instances, there are two separate documents, one for your vertical construction and one for your horizontal construction. Actually, more like stuff that you can actually kick the tires on, and then stuff that's sort of, I guess, study-like. But anyway, you know, the committee should probably formalize it, catalog the requests. It would supplement any spreadsheet that the committee considers developing on a go-forward basis. And, you know, it forces the department heads to really do some planning as to what their needs are. And I can provide fixed asset records that were good through June 30, 2020 as a starting point for the committee. Because I can tell you, I know that there's a lot of old equipment that we're still carrying in the, you know, in inventory that we still find, you know, even though it's outlived its useful life for depreciation purposes. Some of the equipment's still in use. The fire department's a perfect example.
Right. Yeah, I think that would be a great starting point for us to understand what we're looking at from that global perspective for the entire town.
Sure. Okay.
So yeah, Chris, if you could share that with the committee.
Sure.
Thank you. So based on Mr. Rendon's idea that now basically we meet like every other month, you know, then really, so if we were to reconvene the end of June, hypothetically, you know, this would give the municipal building needs a committee time to get off the ground, and really for the building commissioner to begin working on an inventory that's over and above what we already know our fixed assets are. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And then having that information, we can really be armed with how to go forward.
I agree. I mean, I know from when I met with the building department head that one of the issues that we had was, is this really capital outlay or is it really part of maintenance and repairs? And so we obviously, if it's going to be maintenance and repairs, we're going to be increasing budget on the operational side. But that's, we truly need to start probably putting more money to that particular line item in the budget, because I know it hasn't been there in the past. I can tell you quite honestly, I don't know what it's like this year compared to last year in terms of budget for that particular line item. I haven't looked at that specifically, but I know that between Jim and I, we had a hard time drawing a line in the sand just in terms of where things fit.
Yep.
So working hand in hand with them makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So no, that makes perfect sense. So you know, moving forward into kind of agenda item number 5, the committee schedule, do we want to set kind of a long range or 6-month schedule just for planning purposes? And frankly, so you don't have to hear from me every other week about the canceling and rescheduling of meetings?
a good time, and again, I really appreciate all you know, thank you.
What does everybody think?
I will, thank you.
Yeah, I think we can, I would just schedule the next one, and then at that one,
Okay,
you know, I'll take it as an action item myself to come up with the schedule to present to everybody at that meeting, and then we can modify it as we see fit, and then get some sort of approval to make that kind of our schedule for the next year or so. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, we tweak it up until we get it so that it works for everybody and we're all on the same page. But I'll certainly take that on.
thank you.
Thank you.
So just for the next meeting and looking out 2 months, which thankfully would take us past town meeting. I'm not sure what days of the weeks are better for folks, if nights are better, afternoons. I can make whatever work for myself, so. Tom and Robert,
For me, I know if the meeting schedule is established this far in advance or within the next couple of weeks, I can take time out of my work schedule to do it during the course of the day.
I just
can,
request not a Monday.
I can try to do the same as Robert, but my schedule gets jerked around last minute all the time. So, you know, I can commit to it, but I'm going to be tentative probably right up until the day before, just because of the way my schedule tends to work. Especially during the day. Evenings are a little bit different, but the day is a little tougher for me.
so Ken, as a selectman liaison, is there any time that works better or not for you?
No, it doesn't matter. It can be during the day, it can be at night.
Do we want to keep to like a 3 in the afternoon time frame?
That works for me.
Works for me too.
I'm okay with that, but I would prefer that it not be on a night when we're going to have a Board of Selectmen meeting or during the day.
Yeah,
So
that
I
makes
want-
really,
Yeah, I wouldn't want the second or fourth Wednesday of the month for the meeting.
Okay.
the only thing, the 30th, that's kind of viewed already as a holiday week. What does everyone's schedules look like that week? For the 30th of June?
I'm away that week.
What about if we did Thursdays, like the 24th of June?
That works. That's better than June 30th, at least for me anyway.
Me too.
That's fine.
That should work for me, but I'm on the district's negotiating committee, and we're negotiating with the teachers union right now. We're supposed to be buttoned up and done by the second week of June. We meet on Thursday. We meet on Thursday nights. So if we do something earlier on Thursday, like 3 o'clock, that would work. But if it's in the evening on Thursdays, I just don't know if we're going to be wrapped up, because I have a feeling we're going to get. It's an ambitious timeline to get done what they want to get done, and I just don't think we're going to get there in time.
Understood.
And I should be fine.
Okay. So we're planning for 3 p.m. on the 24th of June. And in the meantime, I'll work with the building commissioner to make sure we're in sync and we have hopefully the beginning of information, you know, like at least the fixed assets, but that we're coordinated with him actually going into that meeting as well.
Okay.
Is there any other business that anyone has any thoughts, concerns, ideas, anything else before we adjourn?
No, all set.
Okay. So hearing none, I will wait a motion to adjourn.
Second,
All those in favor? Mike Mullen, I'm an aye.
Aye. I'm an aye.
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 All right, so that's unanimous. And so this meeting is now adjourned, and we'll see everyone back on the 24th of June at 3 p.m.
Thanks, Mike.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.